Hi guys, in today's lesson we're going to start a new chapter which is about location. So we're going to have a look at the reasons for businesses to choose a specific location for production. There are different ways how we can reorganize production. So there are also different strategies which are called outsourcing, offshoring, insourcing, and reshoring. However, this is not going to be, these strategies are not going to be part of today's video. We're going to cover that in another one. Now, deciding on the optimal location. When a business is picking its location, the optimal location would be one that gives the best combination of quantitative and qualitative factors. Now, the three characteristics of location decisions is that the highest management are the people that decide about this decision. It's very costly to reverse this decision and therefore very difficult. So once we choose a location, we're basically going to have to be stuck with it for a very long time. Also, it's a decision which is very strategic. So we're picking our location for the long term, and obviously that's going to impact the whole business quite a lot. So this is why one of the reasons why location is one chapter, or we're basically allocating time to talk about this topic. The best site for expansion or relocation, given the current information, should be chosen based on what the long-term profits would be at that particular location. So if we're thinking about an average business whose main goal is to maximize profit, then obviously we're also going to keep this in mind. The long-term profits is going to be our goal when choosing the optimal location. Now, the best location is always going to be a compromise. All right. So every location is going to have some benefits and some drawbacks. Okay. So, for example, a well-positioned high street shop might have some benefits and some drawbacks. And even a factory location outside of the city center will have some benefits and some drawbacks. Now, let's give some space to you. So I'm going to give you some time. You can pause the video and try to brainstorm what would be the benefits and drawbacks of each of these specific locations. Okay, so let's see what the answers could be. You obviously could have brainstormed something else as well. But a well-positioned high street shop, it has good potential for high sales, so that would be a benefit. Because a lot of people are going through that area, you might actually get more customers than if you would be located in a less frequented location. However, if it's a well-positioned shop, then obviously you're probably going to pay higher rent for that shop compared to an option where your shop would be located, let's say, in the suburbs or even out of the town. Now let's have a look at the factory. A factory location outside of the city center is going to be cheap. For example, if we're going to buy the land, not just rent, but buy it so that we would own it as a business, then obviously it might be cheaper to purchase. However, what would be the drawback of being located outside of the city center? You might have problems recruiting staff in a remote area. Might be because of the fact that people are going to be demotivated traveling outside of the city center, be far, it would take them a lot of time. And uh, as a consequence, your business might have a problem recruiting staff. The idea of choosing the best location, of making this compromise, is balancing the factors, the benefits and the drawbacks, but also balancing quantitative factors with qualitative factors. Now, what do we mean by that? Quantitative factors are going to be measurable in financial terms. So they will have a direct impact on either the costs of the site or a direct impact on the revenues from the site. And obviously, based off of that, it's going to have a direct impact on the profitability. Now, qualitative factors cannot be measured in financial terms. So these would be any non-measurable factors that obviously might influence the business decisions, either like positively or negatively, but you cannot really measure them in terms of finance. So, what do you think could be some of the examples of quantitative factors and qualitative factors? Let's give you some time again to brainstorm, and then let's have a look at the answers. Okay, so some examples. Quantitative factors, these could be transport costs, site costs, so how much it would cost to build the specific factory, or to even like supply it with furniture and the equipment. What would be the labor costs? So here by labor, we might, for example, compare different countries. Some countries where the labor is going to be more expensive, the labor costs would be higher. In other countries, you might benefit actually from lower wages. Even government grants could be a quantitative factor. How much is the government going to support a particular business moving into the location? This can be measured in terms of finance, and even market potential. So, how likely am I to sell to the locals? Is there a high market opportunity? Is the market growing? Is it saturated? You might be answering these types of questions. Now, as for qualitative factors, this can be anything from safety to, let's say, the option for some further expansion. If you basically have room around your factory to maybe expand the factory or not. It can be anything as easy as managers' preferences. Some managers might prefer a certain location, and other managers might prefer a different one. Uh, Ethical considerations, of course. Infrastructure. Is infrastructure going to affect your costs? Obviously, it is. However, can a company easily quantify whether the infrastructure is good or bad in terms of financial impact on some cost, revenues, or profit of the company? Probably not. Okay, it would be very difficult. So infrastructure is going to be a qualitative factor. You might have environmental concerns as another qualitative factor, or even labor supply. If it's going to be a remote area, then you're probably not going to have so many people um, in that particular location that you could hire. So these are some examples. You could have come up with some other examples. That's absolutely fine. Just make sure that you understand where the reasons, the factors would fit, like if it would be a qualitative factor or quantitative. Balancing quantitative factors with qualitative ones, and also benefits and drawbacks. This is basically how we pick the best location. So here I'm going to give an example. High fixed costs of the site and buildings with convenience for customers and potential sales revenue. Okay, here we have some um, description of the location. So this particular location has high fixed costs. However, it also has convenience for customers and potential sales revenue. Now we can split each of these mm, factors, which I highlighted in bold. We can split them into quantitative and qualitative. And also at the same time, we can say whether it's a benefit or a drawback. So high fixed costs is going to be a quantitative factor, and at the same time, it's going to be a drawback. The fact that the location is convenient for customers is a qualitative factor. You cannot really measure convenience in terms of costs, revenues, or profit for the business. But at the same time, it's going to be a benefit for the customers, right? And now, because of the fact that it's convenient, perhaps because of the fact, it might lead to potential sales revenue, maybe higher sales revenue to compare to other sites. So, because this part you can already measure in financial terms, you can measure, you can somehow predict or estimate the sales revenue of that site. It's going to be a quantitative factor, and at the same time, you know that sales revenue is beneficial. Higher sales revenue is going to be more beneficial for the company than lower sales revenue, and that's why we would consider this a benefit. Now, try to have a look or try to decide or split these different, let's say, features or characteristics that we have in these examples into quantitative and qualitative factors, and also into benefits and drawbacks. You can do that with color. You can somehow list it. It's up to you how you do it. You can create a table. Just please make some notes, and I would like you um, to think about that also. So I'll give you some time, and then we can move on in the video. Okay, so if you've not finished, then pause the video and we can move on. The qualitative reasons for location. There can be different ones. We already mentioned some of them. I'm going to talk about just a few more. Managers' preferences, local knowledge. This can mean, for example, being close to the market or knowing the market, knowing the culture. Infrastructure we talked about. Another qualitative reason for picking a location, and here by location we might be picking, for example, specific country or region compared to other regions. So this factor would be political stability. So is the political situation stable or not? What are the government restrictions? What are some regulations there? We might consider ethical consideration, safety, and so on and on and on. And what does this remind you of? This should be reminding you of some analysis that we already covered, and actually a technique that can be used in order to somehow evaluate the qualitative reasons for a location. It's the steeple analysis. Remember, in the steeple analysis, we considered each of the factors separately, and we were doing it in order to somehow analyze the external factors that are affecting our business. And in a way, if we're going to conduct a steeple analysis, which is true for a particular location, we can then use that analysis in order to basically sum up or somehow give us a conclusion about the qualitative reasons for our location. Another thing that I would like to highlight is the connection to economies of scale and to growth. Remember how we were talking about external economies of scale? Well, I kind of mentioned it already, and I would like to just kind of revise what are the external economies of scale. It would be any cost reductions that can benefit a business because of the fact that the industry clusters. What does it mean? Clusters. It means that particular businesses in one industry are growing in one particular region. Yeah. So in this picture over here, you can see that it's like different businesses packed together uh, versus one of the businesses being located in a location where there's no competition. Obviously, competition can play a role, but what would be the advantages of having companies from the same industry located next to each other? Uh, I can use an example of Silicon Valley in the USA uh, to illustrate this. It's a cluster for IT focused businesses. And what can the IT firms in these regions benefit from being clustered together? What do you think? So these could be some of the answers. There's the attraction of qualified labor to the area. If the area is famous for being IT focused, well, then all the people that are going to be somehow interested in this industry are probably going to locate there. All the best talents are going to try to get a job in some of those companies, and basically, it's going to be a great attraction. Yeah, why not for these skilled people? If you have any local colleges located in the cluster, then there will be a lot of courses focused on IT. So you might also get students, interns working or coming from the university, benefiting you from their high skilled knowledge, their high skilled labor, basically. There'll be a big network of uh, suppliers to the IT industry, and these will have their own scale economies, and so probably would be able to offer you components for lower prices. So this might lead to lower costs for your business if you're an IT focused business in Silicon Valley. And obviously, there is much easier cooperation. You can create some joint ventures. You can benefit from this like brainstorming of ideas. Sure, even copying is going to exist between the competition, but that all is kind of benefiting the whole industry because it leads to innovation. It leads to these basically external economies of scale. So this is just something that I wanted to remind you that we've covered as well, and that definitely is related to the chapter of location. Now, what would be the techniques? We already talked about the techniques or the technique of steeple analysis, that is, to evaluate qualitative factors. Now, I also would like to mention the techniques used to assess quantitative factors. So here we go. The first one would be profit estimates. Basically, you're just comparing two locations. One might have higher revenues, higher costs. You compare it to another one and to what the revenues and costs would be at the second location. The idea is that the site with the highest annual potential profit should be the one that you perhaps are going to pick. So here's an example of a question. Calculate the estimated annual profit from these two possible locations for a mobile phone shop. So here you might have site A, which is going to be located in the city center, and site B, which is shopping arcade out of the city. Then you can obviously estimate annual costs, and obviously you can also estimate the annual sales, for example, in units. In the city center, you might have a lot more customers visiting your store. So here the sales forecasts are higher than inside B. The forecast selling price per unit is also different because you're probably going to sell your phones for a higher price in the city center. First of all, because your costs are higher, but also because maybe the customers are going to expect the prices for the mobile phones to be higher since the shop is located in the city center. So now that we've kind of looked at the table, looked at what it means, well, the next step would be for you as the student or for the mobile phone shop to calculate the estimated annual profit. So, as we're going to learn later in finance, profit is calculated as revenue minus costs. Revenue can be calculated as units times price, and once you have the revenue, you deduct the cost from it. So you can try it out. I'm going to give you some time. The second technique, how to assess quantitative factors, is using investment appraisal. The point of this chapter about location is not to go in detail to talk about how investment appraisal is done. However, at this point, the idea is that you learn how investment appraisal can help you decide which location is better for the business. So for investment appraisal, you can use, for example, the payback method. This is going to show you which location will return the original investment most quickly. Similar is the ARR, it's the annual rate of return. Higher the annual rate of return, the better. That means you're getting more profit. So in this case, it's a question for 10 points where you're given information about the TLC Cosmetics sites. And the idea is that we should recommend which site the cosmetics business should choose for its new branch. We also have some information here, like a short case study that we might be using, for example, in order to read about, let's say, some qualitative factors. And the idea is that we do some basic calculations, although here we don't actually have to do any calculations. The calculations have been done for us, but it's about reading and discussing the benefits and disadvantages of the different sites with regards to the data, the financial data. The capital cost is £2 million. For site-wide, the capital cost is £3 million. So in the essay, you might be, for example, discussing that 2 million is a lower investment, might be more feasible for the company. They might not be taking such a big loan, and so on. The second row is talking about the length of time it takes to repay the initial capital cost. So this is basically the payback period. And for site X, it takes 2.5 years to repay the capital cost. For site Y, it takes longer, 3.8 years. So which one would be better? Is it better to repay the cost sooner or later? Payback is usually better if it happens earlier. It's more secure for the business. So again, you can mention that in the essay. This would be a benefit for the site X location. Third one is the annual profit, the ARR, made as a percentage of the initial cost. So this is already kind of telling you how ARR is calculated. For ARR, it's actually better to have a higher return. So if we have 14%, that means that we're making more profit compared to the initial cost. In the essay, you might be comparing what is more of a priority for the business, whether to have short payback or higher profitability.